Side Task 1. I startle awake with memory of a vivid dream. I was standing at the checkpoint to cordon, bribing the guards to let me in. Beyond the vehicle boom gate lay the rolling hills of Cordon area, and, in the distance, a train severed along the top of a hill. Fear and excitement threatened my composure as I and a handful of hopeful rookies passed the checkpoint and into the zone. The smell of damp wildgrass and wet soil, the sting of a cold morning, breath steaming before my face, all of it felt lived in a way that few dreams have. What does it mean? It cannot be my dream. The monolith is everything. So, why does this vision present itself? A test? I must have answers. Perhaps my brothers will know. "What do you need, brother?" Charon says. I relay my dream and how vivid and real it felt. Charon looks disturbed by this news. "Beware false visions. The monolith shows us the way, but others may disguise themselves as false prophets. You have fallen under a spell. Best to dispel these falsehoods before Eidolon hears about them. He is less forgiving of disbelievers than I. You aren't a disbeliever? Explain your vision then, brother. Your own mind betrays you because you have not fully embraced the monolith. Make a pilgrimage to the power plant. Rediscover your path and repent these false visions. We don't want others led astray." He turns away, a clear dismissal. I leave, wondering what I accomplished. Charon seemed threatened by the dreams, but I'm not convinced. "Hey," a voice says from the darkness. A monolith rookie steps out, looking around as though afraid to be overheard. "I heard your talk with Charon," he whispers. "Those dreams, I've had them too. Not like yours, but similar. When I asked about them, they threatened to shoot me on the spot. You don't look like someone who scares easily, though. There's a hermit who lives near a burnt-out farmstead in Truck Cemetery. Rumor is that he's ex-monolith, if such a thing could ever exist, brother. When I asked about him, the others laughed at me, but I overheard Ecos talk about the strange hermit who trades with them regularly. Mutant parts, artifacts, whatever he gets his hands on. They say that he wears a patchwork uniform with no shoulder patch, and even though he isn't hostile, they sometimes hear him muttering the monolith prayer." The rookie looks around fearfully. "Perhaps you can tell me what happened if you find him. I can't leave this place. I asked too many questions and they watch me now." He melts into the darkness, leaving me with a lead to chase. I reach the burnt-out farmstead. The area is peppered with burner anomalies and it's too treacherous to walk through. One building, a small stable, lies outside the cluster of flame and char, and is in surprisingly good shape. It's boarded up, save for a handful of bolt holes. It's safe to assume that there's a gun pointed at my chest right now. I stop outside and raise my hands in a show of peace. The thip-thip-thip of suppressed gunfire rakes the ground near my feet. "Leave," a haggard voice says from inside. I blurt out my dream, startled at my own boldness and stupidity. There's an awkward silence. The door cracks open. "Who are you?" the voice asks. "No, silly question. Monolith are all the same." "What do you want?" "To explore your memories?" The door opens wider and a head appears. A grizzled man with a shaggy beard and hair glares at me. "Do I look like a fortune teller? Who are you? Why are you really here?" The hermit eyes me suspiciously. "Why the hell should I trust you?" "Tell you what, you get me 30 monolith patches and we'll talk, okay? Consider it your karmic good deed for the week." The door slams shut. The hermit grins as I count the patches from the crack in the door. His smile grows larger with each patch that drops into the mud. He chuckles when I'm finished. "I'll be damned. You might be the craziest son of a bitch in the zone. You want answers that bad, huh?" His gaze wanders over me, taking in the weaponry and suit. Despite his wild appearance, I sense judgment being passed on me. "All right," he nods. "I need 5 antibiotics. Come back when you have them." He slams the door shut. I sigh and walk away. Let's hope this guy hasn't lost his mind. "You got him?" the hermit says. I hold up the antibiotics for him to see. He smiles. "You're the real deal." He disappears from the crack in the door. The latch rattles inside, then the door quickly swings open. There's no one on the other side. I wait, expecting him to come out. "Are you waiting to catch a cold?" the hermit says. "Come in." I enter cautiously, my grip on my weapon tight, ready to snap it upward at the first sign of danger. The interior is well lit, furnished and orderly, much to my surprise. Boxes of components line one wall, a rack of weapons line another. Whatever the hermit may appear to be, he's organized. He waits for me inside. The monolith suit he wears appears loose on his frame and is faded and worn, but is otherwise well maintained. Hand him over. No, not your gear, the antibiotics, dummy. I do as he asks. Lie down on that cot. He points to a military cot against the wall. It's worn but well maintained, like everything else in the hut. Stack your weapons and gear over there. I hesitate. The hermit sighs. Look, if I wanted your gear, I would have put a bullet in your skull through that crack. You said you want answers. No one said it would be comfortable or easy. This isn't a day spa. There aren't any latte machines or brioche rolls here, buddy. What you're about to go through will be pain like you couldn't imagine. Causes whole body spasms. You really want to be holding a gun when that happens? I don't. I reluctantly do as he says. The need to know more outweighs the risk. I lay on the cot and lace my fingers together to hide the nerves. Spasms weren't part of the deal. The hermit appears beside me with an IV drip. The bag is filled with black liquid. My antibiotics, I hope. It dawns on me what the hermit has in mind, and my nerves calm a little. Right, I'm going to feed this into your arm and you're going to sleep for approximately 5 hours. If there's anything left in that indoctrinated brain of yours, this stuff will bring it out. We have to feed it in slowly. 5 doses all at once would kill you stone dead. Before we begin though, he reaches under the cot and drags out some cargo straps. Gonna need to tie you down. Things can get quite animated. I'll watch over you, don't worry. Might even take pictures. He chuckles at the look on my face. I'm kidding. Or am I? Hold still. He straps me down tight. Struggle as I might, I could never break free from these ties. This is the fun part. The hermit grins. Sweet dreams. It seems as though he's barely finished talking before the world melts into a grey fudge. It's a strange sensation, being asleep, but being aware enough to realize that I'm asleep. This must be what an out-of-body experience feels like. I'm floating in this strange nothing for what feels like a long time, but it's calm, almost peaceful. Violent flashes of colour erupt through the muddy calm. My mind struggles to process them, and a very distant part of my brain registers that my body is arching and bucking against the restraints. My mind melts into a grey sludge under the barrage of dizzying and confusing images. When I open my eyes again, it feels as though I have tried to lift a 1-ton truck for 5 hours. Hello, sleeping beauty, the hermit says. He's sitting in a chair with a sleepy look on his face. Has he been watching over me the whole time? Bet you're feeling like rat shit, he says. Drink some water, eat a hearty meal, get a good night's rest. By the look of your thrashing, I'd say the procedure worked. Flashes of colour, very confusing, right? You won't remember anything at first, but it'll start coming back to you. Did I mention that this phase has a 70% mortality rate? What, do you think you're the first monogrunt to chase lost memories? This is only the first step. You won't recover your memories with a single treatment. Come back to me with 5 controller brains if you want to continue. I hand over the controller brain. The hermit looks impressed. Did you get this by yourself? He whistles. Nice work, buddy. Hey, maybe you aren't a lost cause after all. Not like your brothers, on their knees filleting a slab of rock. Sure, I used to be one of them, but I never completely bought what they were selling. Came to realize that it was all indoctrination, a brainwashing to keep everyone in check. Took me a long time to realize that I knew this already. I remember finding the wish granter, but it's a hazy memory. It explains how I wound up in Monolith. Fanatics aren't normally my style. He claps. But you didn't come here for my sub-story. Drop your gear and strap in. If you thought the last one was ugly, this'll be a real kick in the teeth. I lie on the cot and he tightens the straps. The nerves are worse than last time. At least the antibiotics were man-made drugs. Now I'll be wired up to controller brains. It isn't a thrilling thought. Don't worry, the hermit says. This procedure has a higher success rate. A whole 1%. He winks, and I can't tell if he's joking. He fits a helmet onto my head. Same deal as last time, he says, with one caveat. He drops into the chair. His expression is serious. Never, never, never look directly into the light. If you do, then your brain is toast. Got that? He grins and claps me on the shoulder. Right, here we go. He flips a switch before I change my mind and the world vanishes in a curtain of blood. This experience is nothing like the first. Persistent and pure agony which bleed into forever. The only way to describe it is like skating over a yawning darkness at 100 kilometers an hour, barefoot and on a razor's edge. One slip is oblivion. A portal of white light folds open ahead in front of my perceived consciousness, yet I never reach it. The light offers warmth and sanctuary. With a gargantuan force of will, I force my gaze down, focusing on the pain searing my brain down the middle. Then I'm arching off the cot so hard that it topples to the side. I'm drenched in sweat and shivering uncontrollably. It feels as though my body was dipped in molten lava. The hermit unstraps me and helps me up. His expression is solemn. "You're a strong one. Take a moment to recover. Rest here if you need. I got a level with you. I only made it this far myself. To go further, we need to know more about the nature of our condition. For that, we need the Lab X6 research notes. We'll get it straight from the horse's mouth. I can't go to outskirts anymore. The monolith grunts will shoot me on sight, but you're okay. You're still one of them." He smirks. "In uniform, if nothing else. Recover the research and bring it back. We'll figure out what's what." The hermit looks excited. How long has he languished here, unable to grasp answers just beyond his reach? The hermit throws the door open. His eyes glitter at spotting the lab documents in my hand. A strange and unsettling smile drags his lips upward. I hold up the documents and a small obsidian sample contained within them. I'm not sure, but it could be a fragment from the monolith. I felt strange ever since collecting the documents, and it's only now, looking at this shard of obsidian, that I realize the source of my unease. Beyond the edge of conscious thought, like a noise too high in pitch to hear, I feel something. It makes me uneasy. The hermit slaps his knee and a wide grin parts his beard. He snatches everything from me with the callous indifference of an impatient child, his eyes alight with triumphant fire. The hermit rushes inside and slams the door. An awkward silence falls upon Truck Cemetery, with only the haunting shiver of wind to keep me company. After a while, as if he just remembered I was outside, the hermit's voice echoes dully through the walls of his shack. "Come back in a couple of days. I need time to read this." What just happened? Ah, hell. Does it matter? I'll give him space, but he better have answers when I return. The door to the shack is wide open and swinging in the breeze. A casual sweep of my surroundings doesn't reveal danger. Cautiously, and with weapon raised, I approach. The hermit emerges from the shack, and I'm struck with a sense of déjà vu. Memories come unbidden of a time before. I know the hermit, or have met him at least. The hermit watches me warily as the recollection plays out over my face. "Are you right, Chief?" he asks. I nod, trying to piece everything together, but the bits are maddeningly beyond grasp. "That's great." The hermit eyes me like a wild animal. A pistol is strapped to his hip. He follows my gaze and his fingers twitch. "Listen," he says, "I have a final bit of work that needs to be done. A loner has been poking around lately. Seems like he's up to trouble. I tracked him to the old wagon south of the construction site in Wild Territory, but I can't deal with him as I don't want to draw unwanted attention. You need to deal with him. Figure out why he's hanging around. Take him out if you need to. Once you're back, you can have the upgraded memory device. We can both recover what's rightfully ours. What do you say?" I nod, and my cooperation seems to deflate tension. Cool. I'll be waiting. I leave, still racking my brain for further memories of the hermit and a connection. The loner is roasting a sausage over the campfire when I arrive. He appears unperturbed by my presence. "He told you to kill me, didn't he?" The loner laughs. "I've been watching him for ages." "Nope, I don't deny it. The real question is, why was I watching him?" The loner regards me with a knowing smile. The loner frowns into the fire. The dancing light of the flames lick the hard lines of his face. He looks weary and tired. "Your bearded friend isn't who he appears to be. He retains more of his memory than he admits, though you've helped him recover more. He's in frequent contact with the outside world of late. Seems to coincide with the new signal which appeared. I'm sure you've heard about that too. They're related somehow. He's talked of activating his own signal. I don't know what purpose it serves or what goal he's working towards, but the hermit isn't alone. Outside powers are involved, and they have hooks all through the zone. Something big is going to happen, and I have a feeling we won't know about it until it's too late. If I were you, I'd scrutinize your friends more carefully. You may have a common goal, you may even have the same uniform, but that doesn't make you allies. Still, you can approach him without getting shot. Talk to him.
Force him to reveal his hand. Find out what he's up to here. I'd offer you a spot by the fire, but I only have one sausage and haven't eaten since lunch yesterday. And there's the whole you coming here to kill me thing. Off you go. The loner turns back to the sausage, which is now charred. I leave him to what little joy remains in the ash of his meal. The hermit is packing as I arrive. He spins on hearing my footsteps, his eyes wild. I apologize for startling him, but he doesn't relax. Instead, he squares toward me, hand inching toward the gun at his holster. My pulse begins to race as I shake my head and raise my gun slightly. "I know you," the hermit says, grinning. "I know who you are." The memories tumble into place. The hermit, who wasn't a hermit at the time, and a group of stalkers chasing me through Red Forest, backing me into the eastern mine. Before that, I had shared a campfire with them, a group of strangers who were welcoming and jovial. I don't know what happened. One moment we were joking and toasting to the zone, then it was as though a switch flipped. I was telling a story and had paused to find the next words. When I spoke them, their personalities changed instantly, all of them at the same time. It was like an activation, the thing in movies where a sleeper agent awakens when trigger words are spoken. They all had the same look of fanatical, animalistic murder, which terrified me, and they chased me into the darkness. "You remember," the hermit says, grinning. My gun has been lowering while his raised, and now it's pointing at me. Quite the coincidence that we should meet again, isn't it? Serendipitous even. There are many of us in the zone now. I'll activate them all. You restored my memory, and for that, I'm grateful. That's why I'll spare you the painful death that every other stalker will experience. His grin is crazy, maniacal, as his finger trembles on the trigger in anticipation. I grit my teeth, hoping that the first round hits Kevlar so that I can retaliate. The hermit's head suddenly jerks back in a puff of red mist and he collapses. I instinctively duck and spin, looking for a shooter and realizing that it's too late. But the next round never comes. A flash of light catches my eye. There, in the tower, near the center of the region, is the sausage-roasting loner holding a custom SV-98 sniper rifle. He waves to me, then descends the tower and heads toward Rostock. Thank whatever god still exists that I wasn't on his shit list. The hermit's gear could be bugged, so there's no point taking it. His breast pocket contains a small scrap of paper. On it are 2 lengths of jumbled letters. I recognize the code, and it only takes a moment to decipher it. 2 words coalesce. Activate Fanatic. I stare at the note, gobsmacked. Fanatic is a sleeper? It seems ridiculous until I think about it. One stalker in charge of loner rookies, taking them under his wing, grooming them. What better way to build an army? I still have work to do. Side Task 2. Among Fanatic's things is another scrap of paper, carefully tucked away. It reads, Gavrilenko. It's penned in the same elongated lettering as the hermit's note. Gavrilenko, a ranking duty stalker. I'm shocked at how high this group has planted their agents. It makes no difference. He must go. I forego the guns, ammo and gear for the scrap of paper I know is tucked away somewhere. These sleepers appear to only know of a single other sleeper. Clever. If one gets discovered, it doesn't compromise the whole. It won't help them. I'll track them all down. The next target is Leshy of the Freedom faction. This time, I'm not surprised. Leshy's note is a little different. Trodnik. Careful, we're hunted. They know I'm after them, but they haven't figured out who I am yet. Too bad for them. The note directs me to the bandits. If there's ever a target that deserved a bullet, it's Sultan. He's next. Sultan's note is missing, but his PDA is unlocked. He must have been using it when I took him out. There's a stash highlighted at the end of the Comet Tunnel, south of the factory. A bandit hiding his loot. Figures. Sure enough, Sultan's note is tucked inside the stash. It reads, Rogovets. There's never been a better opportunity to assault the military. Rogovets' note is tucked into a breast pocket. A bit lax for military, but these sleepers are arrogant. Aslan, the note reads. That's a name that needs no introduction. Aslan's lottery is infamous throughout the zone. Aslan has a handful of notes in various pockets, each containing a name. Cold, of Clear Sky in the Great Swamps. Wolf, of the Loners in Cordon. Mangan of Duty in Rostock, Professor Ozerski of the Ecologists in Jupiter, and Skinflint of Freedom in Army Warehouses. He knew someone would come, and so scribbled out decoys, the bastard. I'm surprised he didn't cut and run. They must be shitting themselves now, a rogue stalker hunting their group. I could puzzle out the next target, or I could kill them all and write it off as collateral. Professor Ozerski's body contains a folded scrap of paper. A name is written in biro. Duggan Porter. The name sounds familiar. That thought lingers a moment before hammering home like the ponderous crash of a pseudo-giant fist. I saw it penciled across multiple lines of a filthy piece of paper on the hermit's desk. The name on the paper. It was him. It was the hermit remembering his real name. The circle is complete. There were many high-ranking names on those notes, prominent people among their respective factions. This will slow whatever agenda was at work here. Perhaps one day I'll uncover the true nature of this threat. Memories. Detail 1. Coffee, black, and a little hotter than is comfortable. My favourite morning ritual. Detail 2. A lab filled with electronic equipment, a pair of hands dirty with lubricant. Was this my job? Detail 3. A beautiful woman with black hair keeps surfacing in my mind. Her physical details are a blur. Detail 4. An article about an expedition to Siberia. Must have been something exciting there. Detail 5. Standing at the cordon checkpoint, anxious, hopeful, cold. Detail 6. The beautiful woman, her name is Galina. She's a scientist, according to the article. Detail 7. The woman's features are stunning, like a pin-up. She's not a pin-up, is she? That'd be embarrassing to remember. Detail 8. A grinning face, barely recognizable without a beard. The hermit. I know him, but I'm not sure how. Detail 9. Galina had odd mismatched coloured eyes. Striking. Detail 10. Galina, my lovely wife. How could I forget those memories? I am complete knowing this. Detail 11. There is still a gap of unreachable nothing, a feeling of hostility from outside the zone. Main story task. You flip switches on the radio and it sputters to life with a crackle of garbled static. Curious, you sweep the known range of frequencies to see who is out there, but the chirp of shifting frequencies never resolves into anything more than a droll hiss. You're about to switch it off when something compels you to go above the established range of PDA, walkie-talkie and RF beacon chatter. To your surprise, somewhere near the upper reaches of the radio band is a burst of static. Your comm station is basic, but good enough to detect something. It could be military, it could be an old stash frequency, it could be an old piece of Soviet tech screaming a final goodbye into the invisible noise of the universe. It might be nothing, but it could be something. The eggheads have better equipment. Perhaps Professor Sakharov can tell you more. A new signal, you say? Sakharov quirks a bushy eyebrow and shuffles to his communications center. It's modern and impressive. You can't identify half the devices on the table. He enters the frequency into a digital display, and the familiar noise warbles from the stereo speakers flanking the desk. A suite of software immediately kicks in, cleaning the noise. The signal coalesces into a strange undulating series of pulsing whose timing and pitch vary. The audio rumbles through the subwoofer, settling at the base of your skull in a fuzzy, unpleasant prickle. Sakharov frowns. I've not heard anything quite like this, no. You want to know where it's coming from? Sakharov squints at the readout. It appears that even our advanced equipment isn't enough to triangulate the signal. It might be bouncing off a number of relays. Sakharov paces the floor, growing excited by this find. I would love to know the origin of this signal. There is still much out there that we haven't uncovered. He stops and looks at you. The government cut our funding months ago, so a request for equipment is out of the question. But, he waggles a finger. The military were testing advanced communication technology in this area. Do you feel up to a trip to Lab X16? The darkness presses close as you take the lab documents, lying on the floor in the gruesome experimentation room. Dust slides from the aged cover as you carefully open the binder. If there was technology developed which created this signal, it was made long ago. Many of the pages contain scientific equations and observations beyond your ability to interpret. A schematic is tucked among the loose-leaf collection of data. You slide it carefully from between the pages and open it. A lot of the notes scrawled among the diagram make no sense, but you understand enough to be able to build the receiver from this schematic. You're about to leave when dizziness and disorientation crash over you. You fall to one knee, the darkness spinning like a flushed toilet. Visions blaze through your mind, jaundiced and grainy. The lab, the documents, pain and horror. A voice rumbles so deep that it vibrates through your very being.
This find is yours, warrior, and yours alone. Do not let others steal your glory, and do not betray your kin.
The feeling vanishes in a blink, leaving a backwash of exhaustion. Shaking, you rise from the floor and dust yourself, no longer wanting to be in this tomb. Sakharov takes the documents and flips through them. There's a lot of interesting data here, yes. Schematics, you say? Yes, of course, here they are. Sakharov frowns as his eyes dart over the page. Yes, I think we can get these components, but it could take time. He raises a thick eyebrow to regard you. Unless you want to build it. You look like the resourceful sort. Sakharov nods. Yes, very good. He regards you skeptically a moment, and you get the impression that he sees an ape in a fancy suit. Sakharov scribbles on the old blueprints in red biro, circling bits and adding notes. He nods as he hands it to you. That should be easy enough to follow. You look at his scribble. A 12-year-old with a Lego set could follow these instructions. Your first impulse is indignation and anger, but it's quickly replaced by thoughtful respect. Finding the components will be hard enough, at least the assembly will be easy. Sakharov catches the flash of emotion running over your face and grins encouragingly. You take the blueprints. Now comes the fun part, putting the damn thing together. The amplified receiver hisses to life when I switch it on. The static bursts coming from the improved speakers have a finer quality to them. The origin of the strange pulsing bursts is now clear with a full suite of military-grade software piecing the jagged spikes of sound together. The signal converges on the familiar complex, the Agriprom factory. It makes sense. Those psi emitters would be the perfect spot to hide something in plain sight. I have trouble identifying the transmitter. I know it's here, but it's so integrated into the psi emitter that it takes careful study to spot it. The transmitter is spliced into the stalk of the psi emitter, the wires expertly threaded around and through the column so that it looks like one unit. The transmission device sits atop the emitter and looks the world like it always belonged there, another needle point thrust toward the flaking roof. I pull a toolkit out, about to take a closer look, when a feeling stops me dead. Standing in the far doorway is a figure dressed in a black Siva suit. There's no faction badge on the uniform. Siva is holding an AK variant, but they don't raise it at me. A strong, booming voice speaks through the filter of the oval helmet. You must not interfere with the signal, Stalker. Siva takes my silence as a cue to continue. He seems hesitant, as though wondering how much he should share. What you probably don't know about the zone, what no one talks about, is how creatures are escaping, he says. Not the mutated pigs or boars, they're dangerous, but nothing a skilled hunter can't deal with. I'm talking about greater dangers. This transmitter is drawing them back, a recall of sorts. They resist, but the transmission wins over time, and they will return, where they'll be dealt with by experienced stalkers. The military have traced this transmission and are planning an assault to shut it down. You must stop them. The entire military base in Agriprom must be wiped out before they destroy the transmitter. I know this is a lot coming from a stranger. Put your trust in me, and I'll repay the favor. Siva is tinkering with the transmitter when I enter. Even through my suit's protection, I feel an ominous thundering at the temples like an approaching apocalypse. How can Siva stand to be so close to that thing? I'm sorry that I asked this of you, Siva says. They will do the government's bidding without question, but there's no guarantee that they're in control anymore. We have a new problem. Siva taps at his PDA a moment. I receive a message on my PDA from an unknown address. I look up, and Siva nods. I open the message. It's blueprints for a device. The transmission is no longer strong enough, Siva says. They have ranged too far beyond the zone. I need you to craft this signal booster. I would do it myself, but there are other matters I need to attend to. I'm hearing reports of a new military stalker in the zone. They say he acts like military but doesn't wear a faction patch. He's special operations, I'm certain, and he was sent here specifically to shut down the signal. How am I sure? Siva stares south. I just know. You should go. I message Siva that the signal booster is built, then wait. He arrives a few hours later, breathless. Good work, you've gone above and beyond, but I'd expect nothing less. Sorry to cut this short, but I need you to do something else while I install this. The military weren't happy about the attack on their Agriprom base and are planning to sweep the area. They'll find the transmitter if they do. I have it on good authority that our special operations friend is leading them now. They are more dangerous under his leadership. Siva grabs my hand and slaps something into it. It's an ornate butterfly brooch. The gold frame houses wings of fine multicolored opal, which has the most striking reds and greens I've ever seen. The body is studded with amethyst, creating a harmonious flow of color from left to right, top to bottom. The piece looks old, likely a treasured heirloom. Give this to Sid, Siva says. If there's a touch of remorse in that voice, it's gone in a flash. Tell him to keep the military away from Agriprom. Don't worry, Sid's shady, but he won't ask questions.
Well, who do we have here? What can Sid do for you, huh?
Sid smiles, revealing teeth that haven't seen a brush in a decade. I hand him the brooch and explain that the military need to be kept away from Agriprom. He's only half paying attention, his gaze locked on the brooch.
Lovely, Sid says. You don't see stuff like this in the zone often. Not anymore.
Sid is quiet as some inner emotion wrinkles his brow.
I've seen this piece a long time ago. You don't forget something like this. Sticks out from the crowd, you know? Where did you get it?
I lie and tell Sid that I found it inside one of the labs.
Is that so? He says. And here I thought Stalkers had picked the labs clean years ago.
His eyes say that he doesn't believe me, but he lets it slide.
Sure, I'll do what you ask.
I'm surprised. Sid has a reputation for haggling a deal in his favor. Curious, I ask where he's seen the brooch before. Sid falls into thought.
I've only seen it once, he says. Pinned on a scientist entering the zone, one of the first groups to set foot in this cursed place.
Sid chuckles.
You know, I never saw her face, but I imagine that she was pretty. That brooch, it must have been good luck or something. I don't know why you would carry something so precious into a place like this. It didn't do them much good. The military lost contact with the group a short while later, and they were never heard from again. Not even those military clowns were brave enough to go after them. Probably became mutant food or turned into brainless zombies. A shame.
Sid remembers my presence and waves a hand.
You can leave now. I have work to do.
My PDA chirps as I leave Sid's bunker. It's a message from Siva. Meet me at Lab X18, it says. I wait outside Lab X18 for 30 minutes, chewing some rations and cleaning my weapons. The PDA chirps. I tap the message from Siva and read. I know you have a lot of questions. You've been patient and trusted me, and now it's time to repay the favor. There are documents hidden inside the lab. They explain everything. I warn you, once you read those documents, there's no turning back, not after knowing what you'll know. Check the inside of the console on the observation scaffold overlooking the specimen tanks. The documents are precisely where Siva says they are, carefully sealed inside an old zip-locked bag. I carefully open the bag and slide a manila folder out. Most of the documents inside the folder are meticulous lists of day-to-day activities and observations. A findings report is clearly marked with a red sticker. I flip it open and pause at the first paragraph. There's no turning back, Siva said. I'm ready. The pages read like something out of a horror novel, and I'm unable to tear myself away. Experiments, first on creatures to measure their psychic ability, then on humans to apply the rudimentary learnings. Extensive testing on subjects of varying backgrounds to determine candidates for the program. Then, testing on humans. The details are horrific. Malformed faces and twisted physiology resulting from extreme psi exposure. The liquid inside subjects' skulls boiled and bursting, or gruesome gaping cracks in the head. The black and white photos make me want to retch. Their ambiguous smear of monochrome somehow made more visceral and real when committed to shiny film paper. Subjects repeatedly tortured with psi overexposure to invoke a natural immunity. Then, abilities develop, unnoticed at first. The testing staff suffer migraines, blood noses, even dermal bruising. It isn't until a subject almost forces a scientist to stab themselves in the eye with a pencil that staff realize what's happening with their test subjects. Shock collars, cortical inhibitors, drugs strong enough to level a rhino. But the subject's abilities grow too quickly, their power amplified by some unmeasurable and speculative phenomena. More pictures, and this time they look very familiar to the malevolent creatures stalking the zone. The last entry, hastily scrawled, speculates how these new beings have the potential to manipulate power around the world. The program is a success, and candidates can be trained and disciplined for a subservient life outside the zone. I put the file down, suddenly unable to stand. I feel like puking. This is a dossier on the creation of controllers. Not the psi-enabled animals roaming the zone now, they appear to be the failures, but a heightened breed of alpha controller, capable of rational thought and retaining most of their cognitive ability. The thought of them leaving the zone sends an involuntary shiver down my spine which makes me feel cold all over. I may never feel warmth again while these creatures roam the earth. Siva is waiting when I emerge. It's a lot to take in, he says. Now you understand why I've kept it a secret. Imagine the mass panic, the witch hunts, the genocide and persecution. Stalkers are already a hunted species here, but imagine if it were every person for themselves. And that only scratches the surface. We know that our nation's leaders are puppets, but imagine if a controller were the puppet master. What do you think the endgame is? The noosphere wouldn't need to expand. A cabal of controllers spread across the globe could instigate nuclear war. Chernobyl on a worldwide scale. Their paradise, their playground, and the remaining shred of humanity, their playthings. Siva falls silent. There's little else to say. It's incredible, incredulous, inconceivable. The pieces aren't completely lining up, but the information doesn't have the stink of bullshit like the ghost stories of the zone. I haven't seen controllers returning to the zone, but I've never noticed them leave either. Perhaps it's a stalker's naive delusion that everything which comes from the zone stays in the zone. Siva is watching me closely. I feel it, even through the bulbous reflective helmet. It's time that our colleagues in the zone learn about this threat, Siva says. Take those documents to Professor Herman in the ecologist lab in Jupiter. He's trustworthy. Make sure he shares them with no one. We can't risk losing them, not yet. Ask him if it's possible to sterilize these alphas of their ability. Perhaps artifacts can counter or assist in this effort. He will know best. I have other work to do. I'll leave this in your capable hands. Siva places a hand on my shoulder. The touch is light and warm, even through my armor. Try not to dwell on it too much, he says. Focus on the next step. The human brain is easily overwhelmed by too much information. Siva leaves me with my thoughts. He was right. No matter how far I run now, I will never shake this threat. Government surveillance would take on a whole new... I snap out of it. Siva is right. This is a lot to process. Best to focus on the next step. Professor Herman looks up from his PDA as I approach. Hello, Stalker. What can I do for you? I ask if there's a place we can talk privately. Herman leads us into a small room filled with empty baked bean cans, thick academic books, and a small cot. The room smells of cleaning fluid, undercut by the pungent human odor of a room never aired. What's so important that we must talk in private, he says. I warn you, if there's any funny business... I hand him the documents from Lab X18 and point to the report findings. His face changes while he reads them, shifting from mild annoyance to disbelief and finally to worry. This is an elaborate piece of amusement, but the joke's over. Congratulations, you nearly fooled the lab coat. He watches me, looking, hoping for signs of a ruse. His tenuous smile drops and the colour drains from his face when I shake my head. Where did you find this? He says, his voice a hoarse whisper. I think I need to sit down. He drops heavily onto the cot. The yellowed glare of the computer monitor makes him look 20 years older. We had suspicions, and of course there's the old lab reports about experiments, but to think that any would leave the zone, it's unfathomable. You want to use artifacts to sterilize the creatures? Can we even call them creatures? My God, what have they done? I grip his shoulder hard until he shrugs me off. Yes, I can look into this. Let me think. Black spray. Get me 3 black spray artifacts. That should be enough to begin research. Of course I'll keep this a secret for now. Who would believe me? Besides, we don't want to panic anyone. I'm not panicked. I'm fine. I'm doing fine. I'm fine. Herman's eyes lose focus. I'm fine. I leave Herman to reconcile this new information. Professor Herman takes me into a private room. He has a hunted look with dark bags under his eyes. It's clear that he hasn't slept properly since reading the lab documents.
You've got the artifacts? That's amazing. Herman dismisses them. I've been doing some research and I think I know how to do what you're asking. By reversing the... I hold up a hand. He frowns but nods. I suppose you don't need to know the details, he says. Here, I created blueprints for a new transmitter. It's much more powerful than the current one. It taps into the noosphere. I can't build it here though. It will raise too much suspicion. They're already watching me. He looks over my shoulder toward the door, even though it's closed. Siva was right. Humanity isn't ready for this. I take the blueprints and leave, but not before dropping a blister pack of sleeping pills on the bed. Herman looks surprised and grateful. Not like he needed permission. This place is loaded with enough exotic pills to level a zoo. I message Professor Herman that the psi emitter is built, and a moment later the audio on my PDA crackles alive. It's Herman. I can barely hear his whispering voice above the tinny speaker. Stalker, this is Professor Herman. Good job on the transmitter. Now it must be installed. You're not going to like this. It must be connected to a source with enough power to adequately amplify the signal. There's only one such source in the zone. A dread certainty falls over me as Herman speaks the words. The monolith. We both fall silent, locked in dire thought at the prospect of travelling north under false pretenses. Monolith won't like this. I can't talk long, Herman says. They're watching me. I can feel their eyes on my back whenever I work. Make sure you do this quickly before they make their move. I can't do this much longer. There's a pleading desperation in his voice as Herman signs off. A new message hits my PDA. I'm only partially surprised to see a monolith logo. The message reads, You have erred from the path. The monolith has cast you aside as you have done your brethren. Do not come back here. You are not welcome. You are no longer one of the chosen. How did they learn of my plan? It doesn't matter. This needs to be done. Perhaps this has always been my destiny since I entered the zone. I feel the powerful tug of the wish granter long before I set eyes on it. The feeling begins as a tremble at the edge of consciousness, like a headache that never lands, and it builds with each step. Even as a monolith in exile, the raw power emanating from the object is undeniable. Siva is waiting by the obsidian structure. He seems unaffected by his proximity to the object. I marvel at the resolve required to stand in the presence of something so corrosive to the mind. You sacrificed much to stand here, Siva says, coming forward. You deserve closure. Before I can ask what that means, Siva is reaching up to release the seals on the helmet. He slowly lowers the cold oval helmet to reveal himself. The shock makes my skin prickle in a hot flush. I desperately want to raise my gun, but know that it's too late. A controller stares back at me, helmet under the crook of its arm, a strange, almost human mix of emotions coloring its face. It isn't smiling in hungry triumph like I expected to. It looks sad. That's when the fog of terror in my brain lifts a little. A detail catches my attention and I look closer. Something about the face is maddeningly familiar. Then I see it. I know that my eyes are wide, my mouth open and gulping in lungfuls of air, but the dizziness won't disappear. I hear a distant moan and it takes a moment to realize that it's coming from my mouth. I drop to the ground, the world spinning overhead. The eyes, those beautiful mismatched eyes, one a striking light blue, the other hazel. My voice is distant, trembling, hopeful. Galina, my love. The controller, Galina, smiles a sad and heartbreaking smile. She nods. I was worried that you would never remember, she says. At once the missing pieces fall into place. I voice it out loud to make sure it solidifies in my mind. The expedition for your work, I say. It wasn't to Siberia. She shakes her head. I continue. You were gone all that time. I couldn't bear not knowing. They wouldn't tell me anything about your work, told me to stop asking. I broke in one night using your access card. I pieced it together. Then I came to find you, my love. That's when an overwhelming wave of emotion hits and tears flood my vision. What have they done to you? Galina approaches and kneels. Even with the controller's face, she looks at me the way she always has, head cocked slightly to one side, partial smile parting her lips. A gentle, calm feeling settles over me as her power tries to take the edge off my frayed psyche. They lied to us, she says, about everything. We knew we were coming to the zone, but we thought it was to study the phenomena happening here. They had always planned to use us as test subjects for their perverted experiments, our own government.
The horrors I witnessed in that lab. You saw the pictures. But we broke free. Most had already lost their humanity, but a few of us retained the parts which still made us human. We tried to contain the others, but there were too many. We also fell prey to trophy hunters. So, we hid ourselves. I don't know how many of us are left. We miss our families, miss our lives, but we can never return. She pauses to wipe tears from her eyes. They are free in the world. That's why you must do this. Activate the transmitter. It should reach every one of our kind, no matter where they are. My voice is too level and calm for the emotions I feel. That will kill you too, I say with awful certainty. She nods. As it must. I can never be what I was, but you can grant me this final dignity from husband to wife, a parting mercy. Every part of me wants to stop, to run from this place with Galena, to find a way out of this hopeless mess. I know it would be running from the inevitable truth. I set up the transmitter, all the while recognizing that her compulsion is helping me complete the task. Without it, I'd fall to bits. Within moments, it is erected. All that's left is to connect it to the wish granter. She nods, flooding me with one last wave of warmth and love. I love you, Amvrasi. With trembling hands, I connect the transmitter to the wish granter. The transmitter crackles to life the moment I touch the wires to the wish granter. Power seethes through the connection and the transmitter hums, a low, deep, angry sound, more felt than heard. Galena spasms violently, her back arching and eyes bulging. An inhuman growl bellows from deep within her chest, a primal cry of pain and rage and dwindling life. My instinct to rush to her vanishes in a whitening thunderclap. Something slaps my chest so hard that when I open my eyes again, I'm staring at the massive hole in the ceiling left by the Reactor 4 explosion. I try to stand, but my vision swims and a high-pitched ringing feels like it might split my head in two. The world fades to black. My eyes open once, twice, a ragged breath, another. Slowly, carefully, I sit up. Time has passed. Light from above is coming in at a different angle. Galena's body is crumpled near the monolith. Galena! It doesn't sound like my voice, hard and choked with dust. I scramble over the rubble toward her, but my heart already aches, slowly crushed with the reality. She is gone. Her eyes stare lifeless at the ceiling. Her face is twisted into a pained grimace, but the wrinkles of her eyes are smiling. Release. Her fist is clutched to her chest. I tenderly open it. A wedding ring, the one I picked for her that warm July night while we strolled along the Rue de Rivoli. I can't resolve that memory with the creature at my feet. With my eyes closed and a force of will, she's that beautiful, radiant woman I met 7 years ago, full of life and mischief. I kneel and gently close Galena's eyes as tears spill freely from my own. She's at peace now. I hope that in time, when the excruciating ache subsides, that her memory will give me peace too, and fill the hole that her passing has left. I also hope that the transmitter did its job, because I never want to see this place again.
The last time Stalker and his posse were seen was by Monolith forces as they fell to his careful hand and steady aim. News of the assault spread, but no one would ever lay eyes on the men again. Brave Stalkers ventured to Kapachi, drawn by the rumors of a wealth of gear and food. They found nothing. The air inside was thick and musty, and it was as if the place had been empty for decades, save the dragging, careless boots of the zombies who periodically shambled through the place. Rumors around the campfire began. Some claimed that they had seen Stalker roaming the zone alone. Some believed that Stalker had fallen inside the plant, though those close to the fanatics claimed that they were fearful he might return, indicating that he was still alive. Some claimed that he had never existed at all, but the vendors and ecologists who dealt with Stalker regularly rebuked this idea. He was a real man, flesh and blood. They had traded with him, seen him with their own eyes. The zone did not deal in ghosts. Stalker had simply moved on, away from prying eyes, they argued. Some, however, believed that Stalker was something more. They had seen him fall, only to, impossibly, rise again. They compared him to vengeful spirits like the Crow, a being who stalked among the zone seeking retribution for a past wrong.
Others believed him to be as a spirit, a high plains drifter seeking a lago to haunt. His fade into the sunset was proof of their claim, so they said. Those who had been close to him and lived all agreed on one thing. He was a man hunted by his past, chased unwillingly into a future that he would carve out if it did not exist. Those who stood before him crumbled to dust. Stalker lives in the hushed whisper of campfire stories, in the chill night air on the approach of a storm, and among the fine particles of death carelessly breathed and expelled. Stalker may have vanished, but the zone never forgets, and it never lets go.